a roll call. Vanessa?
Chairman Nelson.
Here.
Vice Chairman Short.
Here.
Director Kelly.
Here.
Director Gregorio.
Here.
Director Early.
Here.
And I'm going to call this joint meeting of the City of Crescent City and the Crescent Fire Protection District Board of Directors to order. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Altman.
Here.
Councilmember Inscore.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wright.
Here.
And Mayor Frito.
I am here. At this time, let's stand together and pledge allegiance to the flag of our great nation. Let's write that. Ready and begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. So at this time, we will open up public comment for this meeting. Any member of the audience is invited to address the city council and the district board on any matter that is within the jurisdiction of the city of Crescent City and the fire district. Comments of public interest or on matters appearing on the agenda are accepted. Note, however, that the council nor the board is not able to undertake extended discussion or act on non-agendized items. Such items can be referred to staff for appropriate action, which may include placement on a future agenda. All comments shall be directed towards the entire council and board. Any comments that are not at the microphone are out of order and will not be part of the public record. After receiving recognition from the mayor or the chairman, please state your name and city or county residency for the record. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes. The public is additionally allotted 3 minutes for each agendized item. Is there any public comment at this time?
There's any in person there?
All right. There's a couple different ways that you can submit your public comment to us. If you'd like to call your public comment in, you can dial 253-215-8782 with the webinar ID of 821-6959-8348. Or if you're with us on Zoom, just raise your hand. None on Zoom. All right, seems like there is no public comment, so we will move on. There's no reports or presentations, and I will allow the Fire Protection Board to take the lead on our next item. It's the consent calendar.
Board action approved the May 17th, 2022 meeting minutes of the City Council and Fire Protection District Board. And approved May 17th, 2022 meeting minutes of the City Council. Do I have a motion to? Second? Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
All right, bringing it over to council. Do we have a motion to approve the council meeting minutes for May 17th, 2022?
I'll make a motion to approve the City Council and Fire Protection District Board meeting minutes.
Second.
Do we have any discussion on this? Do we have any public comment on the minutes? Seeing no public comment, clerk, please poll the vote.
Councilmember Altman.
Yes.
Councilmember Inscore.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wright.
Yes.
And Mayor Frito.
Yes.
To new business, volunteer firefighter stipends. Your staff report.
All right, thank you, Chair Nelson. Thank you, Mayor Greeno. So with this item, I believe we do have at least one member of the board, one member of the council that due to the fact that they serve this fire department and would be directly affected by this item, I believe we need to recuse himself. Is that correct?
Correct.
Just for the record, that is board member Gregorio and council member Smith. With that, again, thank you, board, council, for coming together tonight. Tonight is one of those important items that it's good to evaluate. It's good to be able to think about what is fair and what will allow us to retain and recruit our greatest asset in this department, which is the volunteers. The Crescent Fire Protection District and city have come together. The original agreement was in 2015 and formed Crescent Fire City Fire and Rescue. With that came an agreement, and that was the agreement for fire response services. That agreement lays out the cost share, the roles and responsibilities. We last amended this agreement at our last joint meeting, which was just May 17th. We just approved the minutes on. A lot of that was, again, defining the roles of the chief with our new chief that we now have. It was looking at some cost share in regard to city and district expenses, especially in regard to utilities out of Washington Station. The one thing that we did not address, that we talked about, we were going to come back to the district board and the council, was the volunteer fireman stipends. This is what the volunteers are paid, and it's on a per call basis for the volunteers when they're going, and then there's some shift coverage type things. So we'll get into the details of that. There are some nuances though that I think you should understand, not only for this item, but also when we address this in the future with some of the limits of what those are. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to City Attorney Rice, who worked with the district's attorney Ryan Plotz on this item. And so she can tell you all about those nuances of volunteer stipends.
Okay, so when the request came, or the suggestion for some of these increased stipends, we thought it would be a good idea to take a look at the Fair Labor Standards Act 20% rule for volunteers. I was sort of tangentially aware of this rule, but never done an analysis for the stipends, and because they were looking at being increased, thought it was a good time to do so. I reached out to District Council Ryan Fox and asked him if he had done an analysis and if, what his thoughts were. So we ultimately came to the conclusion that we would work together on this and help each other out. It's actually somewhat complicated analysis. It's not real simple, but we worked really well together. We came up with a memo explaining how we came to the conclusions that we did. So I won't go through all of the details, but basically the general rule is that for volunteers to receive, they can receive their expenses, reasonable benefits, or a nominal fee, or any combination thereof for their service without losing their status as volunteers. If you're not a volunteer, you're an employee, and if we, inadvertently made employees, we could be subject to minimum wages, overtime, and penalties for not paying those when they're due. So it's important to make sure that we're comfortable with where we're at. The stipends that we're looking at fall under the nominal fee category, and the Department of Labor has issued guidance under various opinion letters defining what constitutes a nominal fee in the context of volunteers, and also specifically volunteer firefighters. And the most basic rule is that payments to volunteers cannot be paid by the hour and should not exceed 20% of the total compensation that we would have to pay a paid volunteer for the same service. So because we don't have paid volunteer or paid firefighters here, we look to Arcata Fire District and Humboldt Bay Fire District, which I believe are both combination fire departments, and they have paid firefighters of the various ranks. By each rank, we averaged their wages, and averaged those again to come up with what an average wage would be for benefits. We calculated benefits using the Crescent City Police Officers Association benefits. That's our only other safety unit. We don't have benefits established for any firefighters, so we use the cost of those benefits. So in our analysis, we came up to what that 20% number would be for the various ranks. We then had to figure what that would equal on a 12-hour shift. So that was fairly easy. We wrestled a little bit with the question of how to do response stipends, and ultimately came up with that if we capped them monthly at a 20% rate, that should be okay. So our recommendations in the report are based on our mutual conclusion that these rates, in effect with the policies and the resolution, you know, that there is a monthly stipend cap, do fall within the Department of Labor's regulations for nominal fees for volunteers.
That was basically the legal check that we had to do. As everyone knows, we're so fortunate that the volunteers, right, what they offer in this community, what they do for the price, you know, that they're doing it is just a huge asset. Chief Carey coming on board, you know, this is his first joint meeting that we have done other than approving him as fire chief. This is going to be a key piece of allowing him to do his job. So, Chief, do you want to speak to the new stipends and kind of your thoughts on it?
Good evening. Thank you guys for all being here. Happy to be here myself. I wanted to just make a few comments about why this is important, not as just the leader of the fire department, but as a community member as well. The dedication, professionalism, and sacrifice of all these individuals, the men and women of this department as volunteers, it goes beyond what we could put a dollar amount on as stipends or 20% of what a paid person could make. These people are at dinner with their families. They hear the call, they drop what they're doing. They're at movies, they're at sporting events. And, you know, as I've been here on my own for the last few weeks, I've really taken that to heart. These people are volunteering because they want to help and they're here. So that's a little background on why this is so important. And we appreciate everyone's support on this. So to adjust for what we all feel in the community, rising gas, groceries, everything you can talk about, everything's more expensive. So we're just trying to make that a little bit more on the stipend end in order to allow them to do the job and be able to volunteer more. So I wanted to get into the stipends, the actual differences that we're talking about here. So we look at our 12-hour shifts as duty coverage. We do that as duty coverage for whether it's a battalion chief, a captain who's working in the sleeper program, which has been highly successful, and we'd like to improve upon that and add more to that. We're looking at current stipends at $100 for a battalion chief for a 12-hour shift. That's new proposed would be $175. Captains on duty would be from 50 now, and that would bump up to 100. And the sleeper program, currently at 50, we would bump that to 75. Now, along with that, for captains and above, the per call stipends would go away with this increase in the total shift stipend. As far as response stipends go, for our volunteers below captain, non-medical or for medicals for non-EMTs from $5 to $10. For EMTs on medicals from $10 to $15. On fire calls for non-officers, which is below captain, we're looking at 15 to 25. And then our training shifts are going to stay the same. Those are our Tuesday training days at $10. That'll stay the same. We have airport firefighter shifts that are also covered, and they're going to stay the same at $50. We do have a monthly stipend cap, and Eric briefly mentioned a little bit about that. We'll get into a little bit of that later also, but we do have stipend caps for all those amounts as well. We're looking at a monthly stipend cap. Firefighters range from 1,485 all the way up to battalion chiefs at 2,230. And for the reasons that Martha talked about, those are where we're at as far as the stipend increases, some of the reasons why we're looking at that. Can't tell you enough about the passion we have for these volunteers and what they're doing for the community. So if anyone has any questions.
Does anyone on the council have any questions? I have one. So as far as the cap is concerned, does that mean that those firefighters that cap will be unavailable to go on other calls, or they just will not be able to receive the stipend for that call?
They wouldn't be able to receive the stipend. That's the most they would receive.
Okay.
I don't think anything precludes them from still going. And just for perspective, we've looked back at the historical records. We wouldn't have had anyone, at least my understanding, that would have hit it. I don't believe.
They're basically just not getting double pay, they're getting one pay. Only before, I think, they were getting paid the stipend plus.
Well, that's on the duty coverage side of things for like the battalion chiefs and whatnot. They would get their duty coverage, and then plus if a call came in, they were getting that. That would change that. So this would just be that total monthly cap. We're not anticipating that anyone will hit that, although it is possible, just depending on their, their circumstances, how many calls they attend, how many calls we get. So that's kind of range, and that's more on the legal side.
Yeah, there was maybe only twice that it would have happened, because there were just a couple people in a couple months that responded to, 60 plus calls. So they might have gotten close, but
Just looking at this, how often, when was the last time we talked about stipends?
It was 2018. I looked it up this morning as well, just kind of thinking about this. It was February 28th, 2018. It was right after.
Did we do anything?
We did on some, so firefighters, well, if firefighter or EMT, it was only $5 for either one. And that time we increased the EMT to recognize the certification of an EMT. And so it was $5 for the firefighters, $10 for the EMT. That's when we established the battalion chiefs taking that duty shift. Because in the past, Chief Wakefield covered all the shifts for the most part, right? And there wasn't this need to really recognize or to try to compensate the BCs for taking as many shifts as what they're going to be asked to be taken now. So
can we make a policy that we look at this every 2 years or something?
yeah, absolutely. That's the direction.
I mean, $5 doesn't pay for a guy's gas.
That's one of the reasons why we're going back. And so, now that fireman gets 10. It goes to 10, but in all reality, when gas is almost $7 a gallon right now, that barely covers his gas, depending on where he lives.
They're coming from a burger track, that's $10.
Yeah. So that's the thing. We want people to keep responding. We don't want it to cost them money to serve this, this department and this community. And that's really what this comes down to. As far as total budget impact goes for the district and for the city, you look at just the pure numbers of this, based on our higher call volume of 2,000 calls, this increase could cost as much as somewhere around $68,000. If you just run it based on historical numbers. Now, there's been changes in dispatch, so that procedure that's now been developed has reduced our calls from 2,000 down to about 1,600. Still a lot of calls, but with that decrease, if you run the numbers on that projected call volume, which Vanessa's helped us run those numbers, with this increased stipend, it's going to be about a wash. So we budgeted for that higher call volume. Now, based on the lower call volume with the increased stipends, it's going to be pretty close. So we're not suggesting a budget increase right now, although it is going to be close enough. We will keep our eye on it. When we come back at mid-year, this is one of those numbers that should be evaluated, because it just depends on so much, how many calls, what types of calls are they, who responds to them. There's so many factors.
If we were short-staffed for any given month, and a battalion chief, a captain bumped up against this amount here, can it roll over to the yearly maximum or is it set by the month?
This is set as a monthly cap.
So if they did respond in more in a month, they would not get paid.
That's correct.
How is these numbers, monthly cap, how are those derived?
It's based on 20% of what an average, of the wage average that we came up with, wages plus benefits for each rank, what 20% of that is for a month.
It does include benefits.
It does include benefits, yes.
It was based on the Humboldt pay.
The wages were taken from Arcata Fire District and Humboldt Bay Fire District, both of which were very close to each other, slightly different, but very close. And then we used the benefits from Crescent City Police Officers Association, which is our only safety unit.
So we didn't use the statewide average.
No,
I believe the labor code mentions to compare to like setting as far as department size, call volume and all that stuff. So that all comes to play as well. But remember, we're trying to keep the status of volunteer and keep that status as well.
Well, sure. But if you raise the average up, raise it up these numbers, then they should work more.
You know, the other nuance that's worth mentioning is there is a, you look at the resolution piece of it, you'll see there is one area where we have allowed for a battalion chief, and I'm trying to find the exact section right now. Let's see, it's in 4. So effective July 1st, 2022, the volunteer that resides outside of Delaware County travels to Delaware County to provide duty shift coverage as requested by the fire chief, then he or she will be eligible for mileage and per diem based on IRS. So basically what this is, it's trying to allow us the maximum amount of resources. We have a couple of people that would qualify, namely Chief Gillespie, as well as the former Assistant Chief Kurt Watkins, who live in Humboldt County. If we get in a pinch, and we've been in a pinch in the past, we might need them to be able to cover a duty shift. This primarily comes into play during fire season. And so we get in that situation where Chief Gillespie and Battalion Chief Gregorio, I think they had to cover all the duty for about 6 weeks in a row. This would allow for some additional resources to come in and for us to basically compensate them for their mileage coming up, as well as meals is really what that does. We don't anticipate using it very often, but it does give the city and the district, Crescent City Fire and Rescue, that resource if we need to do pull the trigger.
How can we, I don't want to belabor the fact, but how can we even use them? They're not an employee.
They're still volunteer for the department.
They would be considered volunteers.
Yeah, and which they both have indicated they want to maintain that status.
But aren't there certain requirements to become a volunteer? Stay a volunteer, you gotta come to training, you have to meet certain qualifications. We still gonna be able to maintain those qualifications?
So a lot of those qualifications are based on entering fires and structures and doing the hazardous part of it. They would be coming in as more of a duty shift supervisor. So a lot of those trainings and whatnot, they already have the knowledge of what they need to do as far as ICS system, being an incident commander, running shifts and allocating resources type thing. So it wouldn't be as much of the hazardous stuff that our folks have to get training for and testing for to go into hazardous environments.
Would we have to change our operating procedures? Because I think someone stated that if they don't come to so many meetings, blah, blah, blah. So would we have to say something about that particular group that they don't have to do that to make us legal?
I don't think to make it legal, but
yeah, I don't know what the rules are, but we could definitely look at that. And the way that it's written, it just says if we have a volunteer that resides outside of Delaware County, so we have to look at what the requirements are to be a volunteer for city fire and rescue, whether they qualified, and we'll do that. But at this stage, it just makes that option available.
I think what you're referring to might be the internal policies we have.
Yeah,
You need to come
I
to this
think
meeting.
somewhere we have it written, in that they have to,
Yeah, I thought that was in the town.
yeah, so we might have to change some verbiage for them to make it.
When we consider mileage for Gillespie, we're gonna pay for him to come from Hawaii.
This would be from his residence, according to IRS allowance.
Okay.
Fly in the way. Okay. Anything else?
I think that's it from our side.
Okay. Bringing it over to the council, if you guys are, well, do you guys, do they need to take action before we bring it over here, or should we just continue discussion?
Yeah, if there's any more discussion, it'd be good to probably have it as a group, and then, you know, board can take action. and council can take action.
So bringing it over to the council, do we have any questions for staff or any comments concerning the item? Patrick?
I don't have any questions. I just fully support the increase in the stipends across the board. And I agree with board member Short. I think that staff needs to put a placeholder that this is reviewed biannually to make sure that we're staying up for that. That's obviously a responsibility of making sure that the 2x2s are meeting regularly. We talked about that in our last meeting, making sure those meetings continue to happen on a regular basis, which is a good place to, to have that initial conversation about this, but yeah.
Do you think that the reevaluation of the stipends on a biannual basis should be in the verbiage in our
Belongs in the resolution.
Okay.
I think that we need to give clear direction.
okay.
So if there's agreement on that,
Sure.
I think that we should.
And I think I'm in agreement as well. A lot can change in 2 years when it comes to cost, when it comes to just inflation and gas prices. I mean, I completely agree. We do need to revisit this on a biannual basis. Do we have agreement? Consensus on that?
Yeah, it's happened in 6 months. We definitely need to.
Okay, there's consensus on that, so. Is there any further discussion? I agree, this needs to happen, it's needed to happen for quite some time. Our firefighters work hard on a daily basis, and they shouldn't have to bear the brunt of cost to run fires, especially since they're volunteering for this. So. All right, it sounds like discussion, we're finished with discussion on our part. If you'd like to take action on,
Questions on the stipend?
we should probably take public comment as well.
Public comments online or something like that?
No hands raised on Zoom, Chair.
If there's no comments, do I have a motion to approve on the board?
I move to adopt resolution number 2022-4, resolution of the Crescent Fire District Board establishing stipends for the Crescent Fire.
Second, any discussion on that? All in favor, aye? Aye. Oh, we gotta do a poll vote. Okay. but that-
Chairman Nelson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Short,
Yes.
Director Kelly,
Yes.
Director Early.
Yes.
All right. Excellent. Well, we'll bring it back to the council over here. At this time, I'll entertain a motion for our portion.
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve and adopt resolution number 2022-49, a resolution of the city council, the city of Crescent City establishing stipends for Crescent City fire and rescue volunteer firefighters effective July 1st, 2020.
Very good.
call vote.
Councilmember Allen,
Yes.
Councilmember Escobar,
Yes.
Councilmember Hutchinson, Mayor Pro Tem Wright,
Yes.
and Mayor.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, then what we have to adjourn and go to our regular meeting, back to our regular meeting.
No, there's no resolution after this.
You can just be
You can just
done.
adjourn the meeting
Yeah, I'll make a
now.
motion to do it.
You can stick around for our meeting.
The city council is going to adjourn until our next scheduled meeting, which is actually tonight at 6:15.
Thank you, guys.